And welcome back, everybody, to the TV show. I'm Jay Black, joined as always by radio legends, Rhea Hughes and Angelo Cataldi. How are you guys?
Great,
Great.
great, super.
Well, we
Can't
got
talk TV.
can't wait to talk TV. And so this is our first thing we're going to talk about is something that Rhea suggested. Because last week, Angelo, you said, can we do this for the British corner? And then next day, I got an email from Rhea going, hey, I think this is really good. You should check it out. And then let's just make it a segment of the show. And I watched it and oh man, was she right? And before we get into anything else, I just want to say this to Netflix. This is a movie on Netflix called Scoop. It's about the Prince Andrew interview that sort of undid Prince Andrew and how they got there. If you're a Netflix executive and listening to this, these are the movies you should be making. Stop
100%.
spending $200 million to make action movies nobody cares about. Make 10, $20 million movies about small stories that are very interesting. Because this is one of the best things I've seen in a while. I loved it. It's called Scoop. Rhea, did you love it as much as I did?
100%. And I think that Angelo recommended it to me for a specific reason, because it's about the interview with Prince Andrew that just, wound up getting him basically kicked out of the royal family in terms of being able to represent the royal family, because it's about the booker. It's about the producer who booked the famous interview. And as I was watching this, I was texting Angelo, now I know why you wanted me to watch it. It's this woman, Sam. She wrote the book that this was based off of. So she's the one at the BBC for Newsnight who would always get the guests, and none of the other people liked her because she was always out trying to get the guests. And this email comes into her box from you could never get to the royal family, but Prince Andrew had decided to do this launch of a thing he was going to do with young entrepreneurs, and she sent out an email to journalists. And that's how Sam began to talk to this woman. I think her name was Emily, who was Prince Andrew's private secretary. And it didn't happen right away. It actually, I mean, in the movie, it seems like it happened, but it took about a year where this Sam developed this relationship with the private secretary and talked them into doing this interview. The woman who did the interview is played by Gillian Anderson, who I've said to many people, if you've seen The Crown, Gillian Anderson is playing the same character she did in The Crown of Margaret Thatcher, but with much better hair. But she's really good. It's all about the background. Like once they secured it, they had 70 hours and all of the prep work that went into it. And what struck me the most were two things. As you know, Prince Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein and the young women, the underage women he preyed on, was Gillian Anderson's character was like, what am I going to wear in this? And she goes, I don't want him to look at my knees. She shows up at the interview in trousers
Right.
and a jacket buttoned all the way to the top. And Prince Andrew, trousers. And the one other thing as a producer that you always have to, I didn't have to tell Angelo anything about interviewing. He's the best interview I've ever seen. Sam says to Gillian Anderson's character, let him talk. And he buried himself. And they go through it all. It's a phenomenal movie about the background. And while you're watching the interview, you're like, oh my God, this is horrible. But it's extremely well done.
It was great. Yeah.
Sure is.
Angela, you agree?
I loved it. All right. And I hope this doesn't come across as creepy. The reason I initially watched it, I did not know it was about a booker. The minute I saw that, I said, because Rhea was an incredible booker for us. She got whoever we needed whenever we needed them. And I watched it because of the actress who played the booker, Billie Piper.
Yeah.
Billie Piper was a British pop sensation when she was a teenager.
Wow.
And then she became an actress. And I loved her. This is not great. All right. She did a show for 4 years on Showtime. That was one of the sexiest shows I've ever seen in my life. The Secret Diary of a Call Girl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Available now on Prime.
Shocking. You watched it all 4 years.
I said, wow, I haven't seen Billie Piper in 10 years in anything. Let me check this out. Gillian Anderson, I love. The guy that steals it is Rufus Sewell.
Oh,
He is
yes.
this guy, right? Doesn't look anything like Prince Andrew until they make him up and he becomes Prince Andrew. Rhea, how
Wow.
great was he as Prince Andrew?
He was unbelievable because you see the problem with the royal family is they live in this bubble. And he's sitting there and he's doing the interview and he gets done and he looks at every and what they pan around the room is they're showing the horrified looks on some of the people because they know how bad it is. And he gets done and he goes, "That went well, don't you think?" And I'm like, "No,
That was it.
Sewell, yeah, it
Rhea,
was amazing."
I couldn't help it. The most famous interview we did in 33 years at WIP was with Gabe Kaplan. Because he was just an obnoxious, he lied, he did it all, and I really got into a fight with him. And all I could think when Prince Andrew got off, thinking he had done great, when in reality it destroyed his legacy. All right. You think Gabe Kaplan felt good after that interview? Do you think these guys don't even calculate how bad they're coming across until they get public reaction?
The thing about that Gabe Kapler interview, Jay, is we were at the Borgata and they're going back and forth. And Al and I are like this. Oh my God. I just knew it was really bad.
Well, so I want to talk about interviews for a second because this scoop kind of falls under the umbrella of like some of the best interviews have been memorialized in movies. I'm thinking Frost Nixon, which you know, I had seen that clip of Nixon saying when the president does it, it's not a crime a million times without knowing where it had come from. Right. And then I watched the great movie Frost and Nixon. I'm thinking about the interview with Durst on HBO
Oh,
when,
Right.
you know, he goes to the bathroom and
bastard.
confesses to his penis in the bathroom, I guess. I don't know, right? And you know, there's been a ton of these where people have just unraveled. So I want to talk about the legacy of unraveling interviews, but I do want to touch on this. Angelo, you are known as a great interviewer, right? This is one of your claims to fame. You got these guys on in a very high pressure situation. You got people to talk. You brought it out of them. What was your strategy when you used to interview
Wow.
people for doing that?
I always, when I put together an interview, I always made sure I had a lot of questions. Then I would take out questions that I knew they had been asked many times before. Always, I tried toward the end of the interview to ask them something they never expected. You know, if I was just doing a personal interview, like with an athlete, at the very end, they would go, I just love this question. I would go, what was the thing that happened that made you suddenly think you could be a professional athlete and make millions of dollars, et cetera, et cetera? And I got some of the absolute best answers to that kind of stuff. But I'm going to tell you, Jay, yeah, an interviewer matters, but you got Oprah was really good at it. She had a lot of memorable interviews. But she didn't go into the Tom Cruise interview expecting him to jump on the couch and
No.
jump up and down,
Right.
right? Nobody expects that when it happens. Katie Couric, when she trapped Sarah Palin into acknowledging she doesn't even read newspapers,
Yeah.
she was fishing. See, what you do is you throw stuff out that they're not ready for and see if they can adjust to it on the fly. And that's the most revealing part of an interview if they can do that. But you got to ask questions they're not ready for.
Angelo, is there a moment that you smell blood? Is there like a moment where you can see like, okay, I got an opening, I can get something here? Like what is there a giveaway when you're
I
talking
never
to
did a gotcha. I never went into it
No.
with a gotcha. I didn't believe in it. First of all, if they were Eagle people, you don't do a gotcha. I want them to know the general sense of what I'm going to be asking. I'm not trying to get a gotcha
Right.
because more times than not, it doesn't serve any purpose. They will unmask themselves if they have something they're hiding. They'll do it. Just ask the right question. I've seen people, Mike Wallace was the best that ever did it.
Yeah.
He would get these con men, early days of 60 Minutes, when it was really, really good. And he just knew how to do it. He was relentless and ruthless. But I never went into it doing that. They
Can I say
exposed
something?
themselves.
Yeah. Can I say something about that with Angelo? Because here was what Angelo's kind of philosophy was, is these were invited guests on our show.
Yeah.
So we weren't going to embarrass them. Like if there was a tough question, something was going on, criminal, whatever. I would always say, listen, he's going to ask you. You just say the lawyers have instructed, but Angelo has to ask it, otherwise it looks bad. But there were only 2 times where it got contentious, and one of them was not an invited guest. Angelo was ripping John Calipari. So Larry Brown just called in and they were screaming, but Angelo's so good. They're screaming at each other. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And 5 minutes later, Angelo's like, well, why don't you bring John Calipari in? A week later, they stroll in. It's one of the best hour of radios we ever did. Larry Brown, John Calipari. But that was the only time it was contentious. The other time was the Gabe Kapler one, but that was, a whole nother thing. But that turned into, because Angelo took what was completely unscripted with Larry Brown being upset, but because he's so good at what he does, next thing we know, we got Larry Brown in studio for an hour the following week.
There's a certain level of charm, I would imagine, that has to be a part of that. And Angelo's shaking his head.
I have no charm.
Oh, please stop it.
Rhea, do I have charm?
Now, I had to many times circle back with people. So
I would say, Angelo, as the kids say, you have Riz. That's what you have, is Riz.
Rhea has charm. I had the interview. That's what I had.
Well, one person I wish you could have interviewed was OJ.
Wow.
He passed away. I think he passed away either Wednesday or Thursday. It was like very soon after we recorded our show. Yeah. So we're a little late to this party. I felt like we had to talk about it because it's difficult to explain. I was trying to explain to my children that, the 90s were sort of the last gasp of the monoculture, was sort of the last idea that like something could happen, that the entire world stopped and looked at it. Because, you had cable, but you had 20 channels, 25 channels. And, when the OJ Bronco chase happened, right? Everybody remembers where they were because you could not get away from it. There was no place on the planet that someone wasn't watching it or talking about it, at least in America. I was watching the NBA finals with my dad in our living room.
Knicks and the Knicks and the Rockets.
Yeah. And then they shrink the NBA finals down to a little box in the corner. And then there's the Bronco chase happening. And
the crazy thing about that is it was a Friday night. I was watching the game. And I dozed off on the couch because I was doing morning. I don't think I was doing mornings with you, Ange, at that point. I think I was on the country station, but I was doing mornings. So I dozed off, woke up like 10 minutes later, and I go, change the channel, because there was just a white Bronco on it.
Right.
So, it was crazy.
It was insane. Angelo, what do you remember from that time?
Dave, I'll tell you what I remember. It's frustrating to me because I love the OJ story. It was one of my, for us to talk about, was one of the most interesting stories to me, because this was a guy who was a true American sports hero.
Yeah.
Who was a murderer. All right. I will say it straight out. He did the murder. I'm positive, because I watched all of it.
Me too.
I was watching live with the low speed chase. I watched the trial, which went on for months and months and months. Cato Kalin, Lance Ito, all these famous people came out of nowhere. Johnny Cochran. Yeah. It was fascinating to watch.
Kardashians. Robert Kardashian.
Yeah.
That's what made that family famous.
It was the birth of the Kardashian. Yeah. 2 or 3 months into it, Jay, I would bring it up on the air and people would go, oh, please, enough. Never enough. I couldn't get enough of it. It upset me that America had developed such a short attention span for a story that was epic.
It was a gigantic story. And the TV movie, we talked about it on the radio station. The TV show about it was phenomenal, with Cuba Gooding as OJ. Somebody did a super cut of David Schwimmer as the Kardashian saying the juice. Yeah. That came out when he died. Like 35 times he said the juice. I'll never forgive. The thing that really pissed me off about the whole trial was David Letterman, who I was a Letterman guy. When he went on to take on Jay Leno, I wanted him to bury Jay Leno. And Letterman wouldn't talk about OJ because he said 2 people died. I don't want to make jokes about it. And Leno went hard the other way. He had the dancing Itos, and people were so hungry for it.
Yeah.
They switched to Leno and never went back to Letterman. Letterman was number 2 for the rest of his career after that. And I would say the worst thing that came out of it were 2 people died. The second
Yeah.
worst thing that came out of it is Leno beat Letterman, and I'll never forgive OJ for that either. That was terrible, but it was a huge story, and I will never see the likes of something like that again
Won't.
because there's not enough monoculture left anymore. It's too split. All right, last thing. I was just watching this on repeat because I am the world's biggest Billy Joel fan. One of my favorite artists of all time. He's slowed a little bit as he's approaching 80.
Has he had any new music?
He's had one new song, and it's
Yeah, he
great.
did.
Turn the
It
lights
was
back
good
on.
too.
Yeah,
It was a good song.
Big
One
fan
song
of it.
in 31 years.
Yeah. It's he's every 31 years. In 200 years, he'll have an album, Rhea. So just stick with him. But he was doing a live concert on Sunday night, the 100th anniversary or the 100th sellout of Madison Square Garden. They decide to carry it live, which I don't think is, who cares if it's live or not, live concert, but fine. The Masters runs long, so the concert starts late. And because of their contract with the local news, we hear this all the time. They got to get to the local news. They cut Billy Joel, the Piano Man. They cut him off during Piano Man to throw to the local news. And people are calling it the music version of the Heidi game from the NFL. Is this the dumbest move CBS could have possibly done? Angelo, you're nodding your head. Is this dumb?
The people, when you require network suits to make on the spot decisions, this is like managers. This is like Rob Thompson. If it's not scripted, if they don't know exactly what they're doing when they're doing it, and have to make a logical decision in the moment, get somebody there who knows what he's doing. And here's the other thing: the jackass who pulled away from Piero Man, I wasn't watching it, who pulled away. I want to know his name. I want to know who was so stupid.
Yeah.
They knew it was his last song. They had the playlist. Yeah. You're going to cut it off for the local news. And one more thing. This has got me stirred up. Rhea, you know why they were so late? The stupid green jacket ceremony at
there's not a more boring championship presentation. First of all, listen. No one wants to watch men try on clothes.
Right. And not
make that very clear.
And not in that stuffy place. At Augusta National, I know it's a beautiful course. It needs some updating. And those people that run that course, I never liked them, and I still don't.
And the jacket never looks good on anybody. It's the
No.
dumbest award.
It's ugly.
What'd you win? I won this suit coat that looks like something the maitre d' gives you when you show up at a fancy restaurant without a jacket.
Yeah.
So yeah, as a Billy Joel fan, I found that appalling. And just if you know you're going to do a concert, know when it's going to be over, and just tell the local news, hey, we're going to be 5 minutes late. Who cares? And I know they can't do that with the contracts, but pre-record the concert then. How about that?
Well, they're going to wind up, I think, making money because they've already come out and said they're going to rerun it.
Yeah.
I think maybe this would. So, they're going to sell ads.
April 19th, Friday.
Yeah.
Friday at 9 o'clock, and they're promising that they'll go right to the end.
Right. And I watched it on Paramount Plus, so it was fine without the commercial. It's fine, but it's just a frustrating thing. You're right, Angelo. If your network suit, you don't know how to make a decision on the spot. That's not what you're trained for. But you know what we are trained for? British and Teen Corner, America's favorite segment. What do you got for us this week, Rhea?
So I have a really interesting show because I'm not really sure how I feel about it, but I keep watching it. It's called Faithless. It's actually an Irish show, 6 episodes on Acorn via Prime. It's about a husband whose wife shockingly gets killed in like the first minute of the show. So there's no spoilers here. I mean, she gets killed in a somewhat amusing way, but it's incredibly violent. He's left to raise his 3 daughters, like a 16-year-old, 12-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And, he's a complete idiot. Like the wife did everything. So he doesn't know how to do basic things. So I think Faithless is meant to be like a dramedy. There's a little bit too much drama. Like the comedy is kind of raw, I will say that, but it's what life is.
Right.
So I don't know if you've ever heard of the guy. His name is Baz Ashwami. He's most well known for, he's kind of like what they consider in the other countries a presenter, which means he does a lot of TV presenting, but he's famous for the show called 50 Ways to Kill Your Mammy. And he takes
Okay.
his he's Irish and Egyptian, which is what he plays in the show. He's co-creator, wrote it, all that kind of stuff. He takes his 71-year-old Irish mother on daredevil things, skydiving, meeting crocodiles to get the Irish response. Basically, the show is kind of meant to show a new Ireland in that, you know, he was born in Libya but raised in Dublin from the time he was 8 years old. So it's like in the show, he and his kids are telling people, no, we are Irish. Like, we're born and raised here,
Right.
but they're Muslim. He's got his elderly Muslim father, his half brother. I I kept saying, I don't know if I like this. It's 6 episodes. I'm through 5. So there's something about it I like. I just think it's a series that I hope goes on because I think they'll catch their footing to add a little bit more comedy into it. But I
Right.
really do like it.
I'm looking at Baz Ashwami now. He's an interesting looking dude. I'm jealous of Egyptian guys. They go gray and they look
Yeah.
cool because their skin
Yeah.
and their hair don't match. I just look like I'm
They
ashen.
have the greatest hair.
Yeah. I look like somebody like a blue flower in my face. They look really cool when their hair goes gray. All right. So, and that's on Acorn, you said.
It's on Acorn, which you can get via Prime.
Great. And your teen corner?
So Teen Corner, Clark liked it more than I did. And I think, Jay, you've seen it, The Umbrella Academy.
Yes. I watched the first 2 seasons. I don't know if I watched season 3. It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. So the Acorn Academy is based off a comic book. It's about 7 kids. Well, so in 1989, 43 kids were born to women who didn't even know they were pregnant. This billionaire adopts 7 of them, but he doesn't give them names. He gives them numbers according to what their superpowers are.
Right.
So, but the interest, Clark liked it a lot. I lasted through maybe 2 episodes. He gave it a 6 out of 10. He liked it. So their superpowers are to help the world avoid an apocalypse, but they can go back and forth in time. I'm not into time shifting and all that kind of stuff. Here's what I found the most interesting part about it. The biggest star, I think, in the show began as Ellen Page.
Yep.
You guys all know who Ellen Page is.
Yes.
And she has transitioned to Elliot. He's now Elliot. They put it in the show, like I said, we're only through 1 season, but she was such an integral part of it. They've gone through the transition. So she went from Vanya to Victor. So it's
Right.
just, to me, that's like a real interesting part that, you know, she completely changed genders and they kept her in the show and just transitioned the character.
And I'll say I've seen the episode of her first of his first transition show, and they play it really cool. They're like, he says, "I'm a guy now," and they're like, "Okay," and then they just move
Yeah.
on. And it's like
It's
that's the way
cool.
it should be. It's a lot easier when you just say okay and move on.
Yeah,
I'll say,
and I will say I liked her like as Vanya, and I found her to be the most compelling character. Like I was really drawn to her character.
I'm a big fan of Aidan Gallagher, who plays
Yep.
number 5 as a
5,
person who's in his 80s, but he's in the body of a teenager. And
Yeah.
I think he portrays a older person in a younger person's body very well. I really liked his work there.
It's interesting. I think teenagers will like it a lot. I will
Yeah.
say that it didn't speak to me because I'm not into superheroes and supernatural power, but I was intrigued by it. I will say that.
All right. And that's on Netflix, right?
Netflix, correct.
Great. All right, great. Angelo, what do you got for us this week?
I went off the grid this week, Jay, as a result of the incredible finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I said on this show, I believe, you know, when the dust settles, it'll be considered the greatest finale in TV history, the greatest ending. I thought it was spectacular. And then I said, well, what's the greatest ending in movie history? So I began to research it. And 2 very prominent people both believe that they know what it is. And they are Roger Ebert, the late, great Roger Ebert, and the late, great Stanley Kubrick. They both thought the same movie's ending was the most chilling, unexpected, stunning ending they had ever seen in cinema. And I went, well, I got to check it out. And the name of the film, it's a Dutch film. I'm warning you about a couple of things here. One is, you're going to deal with subtitles. The second is, I don't know if you can handle it. All right. I did see this years ago because I had heard about this. And it never left my mind. You will never forget the ending of this movie. And it will haunt you. It will trouble you. So if you do not want to get scared to a level I don't think you've ever had before, do not see Sporlos. Spoorloos, available on Prime now for a bargain price of $3.59. I purchased it. I had already seen it many, many years ago. It's the best money you'll ever spend on
What
a
is it
movie,
about?
or the worst, depending on how you react to that ending. It's about a couple that go to a rest stop and they're in love. And the woman goes in. You know this? You know the
It
movie?
was remade. I believe it
I
was
know.
remade.
I'm
I've
getting
seen
to
the
that.
remake.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
the remake I
I've
saw.
seen,
Yeah.
I've seen the remake, but go ahead.
Me too,
The
Rhea. I've seen
woman
the remake.
disappears for 3 years.
Yep.
The man becomes obsessed in finding her and will do anything to do it. I don't want to give any more away. The final scene you're not ready for, you will not be able to handle. It is not the ending that they did. The director of both is a gentleman named George Sluizer, all right? And he came to Hollywood. The movie was such a sensation. It was incredible in Europe that he brought it here, but they Americanized it and totally ruined it. It's called The Vanishing,
Yes.
right?
Sandra
That's
Bullock,
what
right?
Sporlos means. It's
Right.
all I could tell you is do not watch the Americanized version. Jeff Bridges, it's the worst performance of Jeff Bridges' career.
And Kiefer
And
Sutherland,
Kiefer
right?
Sutherland stinks in it too. All right. The thing stinks. The guy had so little appreciation for our ability to handle the ending that was in the Dutch version that they changed it.
Yeah.
But let me tell you something. Sporlos, if you can handle it, and if you do check it out, please give us some feedback because I want to know if this is a direction you want us to go in. There's a lot of amazing stuff available now, but is it too extreme?
Right.
The ending, Jay, check it out, Jay.
I'll watch it this week.
Don't
Absolutely.
watch it with your family.
And I'll tell you, I won't because The Vanishing
Don't.
disturbed me on a million levels.
Right.
Don't.
And
Don't.
I will just say I won't give anything
Don't.
away. I'm insanely claustrophobic,
Mm.
and I got anxiety watching that movie.
Yeah.
I have
So-
never completely recovered.
No.
Yeah.
But I watched it again because it's brilliant. It's an incredibly engrossing film, but the ending, wow. That's all I could say.
And I just say this, as much as I complain about TV today or where we're at, how great is it that if somebody goes, there's a Dutch film called Sporlo's and you could get it for $3 just
Yeah.
in your house whenever you
So
want.
great.
You
Yeah.
can
So
just
great.
make that happen. That's a nice world that we're living in.
Yes.
So great.
I'm going to give a suggestion. I liked it a lot. I don't know if I'll be able to get Angelo to check it out. Rhea, you might be able to watch this with Clark. It's called Fallout on Amazon. It is a TV show that is based on the video game series Fallout. They did not adapt one of the stories from the video game. They created its own mythology using the setting. Basically, it's in 2079. We're in an alternate world where 1950s aesthetics are carried all the way through. It's 1950s retro futurism. What the 50s thought the future would look like, they live in. There's a nuclear war in 2079, and now it's 200 years later, and there's a whole bunch of people that live in fallout shelters that are built around 1950s aesthetics, right? The fallout shelter of the 1950s, where like there's robots, but they all look like cartoon versions of the robots from the 1950s. They listen to Pat Boone. There's Perry Como that they listen to.
You high when you watch this show?
I you know what? I may have retroactively become high watching it. And it's basically the culture of these people. There's three groups. There's the people that live in the fallout shelters. There's survivors trying to make their way through on the surface, and then there's a group called ghouls that have been effectively made immortal by the mutations of the radiation that look like monster people. It's crazy. It's out there. A friend of mine named Tom Nichols, he used to be he's a writer now. He wrote the book called The Death of Expertise. Loved it. He turned me on to it. He's an expert on Cold War history, and he loves what they did with this. So there's a basis here that is kind of cockeyed, but it's super interesting. It's well worth your time if you can get your head around that aesthetic. If you can't, I can understand why you won't like it, but I really enjoyed it. It's a real fun ride. It's dark and scary. It's scary because it's nuclear war, but it's done with a tongue-in-cheek sense of humor. So I give it. I'll use the Clark scale. I give it an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. Worth checking out.
All right, listen,
Yeah.
Jack, I want to make a deal with you. All
Yeah.
right, I will watch it if you will watch Sporlos.
Done. That is an easy
Done.
trade. I can't wait to see it. I will
Right.
watch Sporlos
And
this week.
text me after the ending.
Yep.
If once your hands settle, because they're going to be like that.
Yeah.
But you know, after that. Anyway, here's
I
what
will
we
not watch either of them. I just want you both to know.
Rhea, you have better taste than us.
Yeah.
We all very highly recommend Scoop on
Yes.
Netflix.
Thumbs up.
It's out now and it's great. And I reference Secret Diary of a Call Girl. If you want something really sexy, you may need it after the other recommendation I get. Amazon Prime has it. It's free with commercials. The OJ thing that you cannot check. It's in all the clips if you want to go to YouTube. Billy Joel's special will be rerun on April 19th at 9. You can also stream it anytime you want on Paramount Plus. Faithless is on Acorn and Prime. Rhea's not sure, but she's near the end, so it must be pretty good. Check it out. The Umbrella Academy is on Netflix. Sporlos is on Amazon Prime, and Fallout is also on Amazon Prime.
Guys, thank you so much. If you enjoyed our podcast, you got to tell some people about it. Spread the word. We're growing so quick, and that's thanks to you. Angelo Cataldi, you can go to angelocataldi.com and buy his book. You see it in the corner there aloud. You can also get the audiobook available wherever you find your audiobooks, and that's read by Angelo. Why wouldn't you want to hear that voice tell his story? Rhea and Angelo, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be back next week with more great TV talk.